Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rants on the Ruling Class. This is the, I guess, 4th of July edition that we're doing. This will be published on just before the 4th of July. But as we look at, the 4th of July weekend and Independence Day, I myself can't help but think of looking back even to the 80s when I used to look at uh, 4th of July through the eyes of a child. It was all about fireworks and flags flying everywhere. You never really understood what it was about. But I think this year, as I look at our independence, you know, it's very clear to me that our independence is very much under attack at every angle, everywhere you turn around. The insanity never stops. And when you and I have talked on this podcast in the past, we've both come to the agreement that we need big, bold change to make things to get this. It's not going to be incremental change. It's going to get us where we need to go. It's going to be big, bold leadership changes. We've talked about all kinds of ways to make that happen. But one thing I'm excited about is now you're seeing Trump come out with his campaign agenda. And a lot of his agenda is big, bold, powerful leadership in obliterating the administrative state, the bureaucracy, the deep state, which needs to happen. And he's coming out and now saying that the line is drawn in the sand, which I love because, you're always kind of wishy-washy about stuff. There's no more wishy-washy. Either you are for Trump and for obliterating everything that stands against America. Trump's not perfect. I get it. I'm not a Trump sycophant. I never have been. But the line is very clear in America today. There's one man that wants to right the ship in this country, and he wants to put America and Americans first, wants to secure our borders, wants to eliminate all the diversity training, inclusion, equity training in our federal government and our employees. He wants to pull funding. He come out and said this week. I think you put it in our group chat. It was on a article that you put in there. He wants to pull federal funding from schools that are teaching CRT and transgender ideologies. This is the big, bold leadership change. This is independence from the Marxism agenda that's being shoved down our throat. This is what I want, and this is what many America wants. And I'm very excited about his stance on this and now starting to vocalize it. I think he's going to pick up a lot of independence because they know what's going on in this country is not right, especially with this coming off this Pride Month in June with everything that was shoved down our throat from every single angle. I never talked to everybody I talked to was sick of it. They're just over it. And the education system is no different. People are tired of that. And him coming out speaking to those two things, in my mind, it's a powerful statement, but yet it's one that needs to be said, and it needs to happen for us to regain our independence from Marxism, I guess.
Well, I totally agree, Todd. It's never been more clear, and I think it's been clear with the American people far longer than it's been clear with our leadership. The choice is very simple. Either we're going to be a country that is ruled by we the people,
right,
or we're going to hand all the decisions, all the ruling power over to an elitist cabal. And, I suppose there's some people okay with that. I'll never understand that. I'll never agree with it. It's not what our country was based on. It's not what made us great. It's not what allowed us to lead the world and free the world. But if you're a person like that and you really don't care, if you feel like your voice doesn't matter and you don't care whose voice is ruling you and dictating to you, there's a lot of people out there. They're like, well, I don't care what they tell everybody else to do as long as they don't tell me what to do. Well, your day will come. I promise you. I know some people that are very invested in the LGBTQ plus trans, whatever all that stuff is. Some of them are feeling like this is their civil rights movement of their lifetime. I think they're very misguided on that, but they're going to be very surprised because the side they're supporting could care less about that agenda. And as soon as they consolidate total power, they're going to be throwing gays off rooftops, just like they do in other authoritarian
they don't
regimes.
care about that at all.
And they'll tromp on minorities. In China, they harvest organs of religious minorities already and other minorities. No, you don't get it. If that's really what your thought is, if you think, well, they're not coming after me, so it's okay. I'm sorry, they will come after you. You're just being very naive in thinking that it will, because it hasn't happened yet, it won't. So the
Right.
choice is clear. It's either freedom, it's either self-rule, or we turn it over to a global cabal. And I think more and more people are realizing that. But what we've lacked, and it's partly because you have to have a popular base understand it enough. There has to be a significant percentage of Americans understand it before a leader can really start enunciating it. But it's very obvious to me that President Trump, in his own mind, believes that that point has been crossed, that we now have enough Americans that are awake to the truth, that do understand what's going on. So you're right. He's being bold. He's going out there and saying what needs to be said. He's calling out the corruption. He's calling out the cabal. He's calling out the authoritarianism. And I couldn't be happier. I mean, you and I have wanted to see that for years.
Right.
And, it's happening. So there's a lot of great things to be said about that.
Well, and I think it speaks to the number of people that are waking up, that have woken up in the last, I would say 6 months. There's been a warp speed on people that are coming around to what we've been talking about for 4 or 5 years inside of PRC. Really what's going on and who's running our country and who's pulling the purse strings. More and more people are starting to scratch their head, and they're starting to question it. What is going on in my country? This is not the country that I grew up in. Things are not running the way that I thought they were run. They're completely different. We're seeing it with Biden. The guy can't even complete a sentence. His tomfoolery all over the news, I believe, has really woke people up to where they're like, who is this clown? How in the world is this the best thing we can put forward as a country to lead our country? Is this clown that is in office now? And when all of these things combine, it, I guess by default, draws a line, and you got to decide which side of the line you're on.
There's a certain herd mentality that goes with that, because there are still a lot of people that are under the illusion that the 2020 election was a fair election.
Right. A lot, way too many.
Yeah. And there's still a lot of people that think, well, Biden got 81 million votes. If that many Americans believe in him, then maybe I should too. And so, we're still fighting that part of it. But every day that goes on, more and more people are waking up. You mentioned independence a minute ago. A recent survey that came out, and this was not a conservative poll, but the majority of Americans now believe that the 2020 election was corrupt. Majority of independents now believe that it was corrupt. And I mean, that's a bellwether poll. That is a harbinger. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a big thing. So, so the tide has turned in that regard. People are waking up, and that's going to accelerate as we go further. We've got 15 months left before the 2024 election. And that is going to continue to accelerate that awakening, that realization. And I've been putting a lot of thought into this. Now I've got several ideas about what we can expect to see over the next 15 months. But, I just think I'm actually more positive today than I was 6 months ago. And I'm really getting excited about the future again, because for a while there, it was pretty hard, Todd. It was pretty tough.
Well, I think I'm pretty, I would say pretty comfy right now, I would say. But a lot of that comes from the realization that probably my belief in God has a lot to do with that too. And that I know that he's in control of what's going on. And even as much as I want to change what's going on, it's really not in my control. Sure, we can do what we can do, and we have to do what we're called to do. But I'm comfy as to what the outcome's going to be, because it's going to be good either way in the end for people that know what I'm talking about and that believe. But when we look at everybody lining up against Trump right now, you've got not just the deep state Marxists, but now you have conservative factions like the Koch brothers pooling their money together.
Same thing, Todd.
Yeah, they're lined up, and they're going to put all forces are going to be against Trump. And when you have people like the Koch brothers and America for Prosperity PAC dumping $70 million in to face off against Trump in the primary, when in truth is they don't even really have a candidate yet they want to back. They just know they don't want to back Trump. They thought they were going to back Ron DeSantis, but his whole kickoff has been a nightmare. So now they're eyeing Tim Scott from South Carolina. And it just to me is we want anybody but Trump mentality as well.
Well, okay, now that's, if you'll allow me, that is closer to the reality than them wanting to back a particular candidate.
Right.
You see, they would rather have whoever the globalist Marxist Democrat candidate is, they would rather have that person win than to have Trump win.
Agreed.
Because Trump will dismantle the deep state, the administrative state, and they do not want that to happen. But I mean, that's the butter on their bread.
Right.
So
that's how they make their money.
That's right. So the last thing they want to have happen is someone to come in that's a nationalist and not a globalist. So yeah, at all odds. And the 70 million, you're right. There's no candidate to spend that money on right now. That's not stopping him, is it? Because that money is going to be going to trash Trump.
Exactly.
Everything they can do to make him lose.
Yeah, a smear campaign like you've never seen. Well, I know one thing for sure that I can say without any reservation. There has never been any person that has ran for a public office that has been more vetted, more investigated, more ran through the ringer than Donald Trump. And if they had anything on him by now, as much as they hate him, I can guarantee you he would already be in jail or in prison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And they're still trying, obviously, with all the faux indictments and all these other things. But, it's not going to make any difference.
Right.
He's up 9 points since February, even with all the indictments. It's going to be a very interesting 15 months.
It is. I'm really anxious to see what's going to happen. I'm really loving all the people that jumped in behind Ron DeSantis, watching them having a little regrets right now about what's going on with his campaign. A lot of Floridians are mad at DeSantis because they elected him to be governor of Florida, and they want him to continue to be governor of Florida. He's done some great things in Florida, and that's a whole other conversation. But they're mad at him because he's now given that a half-hearted effort and not doing what he said he was going to do in Florida because he's trying to focus on getting into the presidential race. And it's been a hot mess from the time he started.
Well, a lot of those people backed him because they thought he was a MAGA, America first type of guy. But now look who he's aligned himself with. It's the Koch brothers money, the Karl Rove consultants, the whole Rhino administrative class. And people are starting to realize, gee, at Christmas, this guy is not who I thought he was. And so, yeah, they're mad about that. He has done a good job as governor of Florida. And maybe it's the Peter principle, that maybe that's where he needs to stay. Because if he's going to have those other people around him running his campaign and financing him as a federal official, especially as president, then there's not going to be any change. It wouldn't make any difference if it's Biden or DeSantis or Gavin Newsome or Michelle Obama. It doesn't make any difference who is sitting in the Oval Office, as long as they are a globalist, Marxist, administration state type of person, establishment person. Nothing's going to change, and people are realizing that.
Well, they are realizing it, but the thing about it is they're realizing we had 4 years of Trump. We were energy independent, no wars, our robust economy, stock market was through the roof, our 401k, our retirements were blowing up. Everybody, employment for minorities in this country was at an all-time
no new wars. The world respected us.
Yeah, and it was peace through strength, and it worked. And people are now looking at what's going on, and they're realizing, hey, maybe I didn't like Trump, but I sure liked America the 4 years that Trump was in office. And what we're doing now, I don't like that. And when you say DeSantis or Obama or whoever comes back in that's part of the globalist agenda, nothing's going to change is 100% true, because I guess the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results, and you're not going to get different results.
Those people don't
get a different candidate.
Right. Whether it's Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis or Joe Biden, those people don't represent you. They represent the globalist interest, which by definition is not putting America first.
Yep. And I had gotten a conversation on True Social the other day with some somebody, I don't remember who it was or what, but it was a conversation about how big of a joke Trump was at exposing the deep state, that he never exposed any of the deep state. That if we still think Trump's exposing the deep state, that we're living in la land. That dude is a master of letting them expose themselves. And it happens every single day. Look at the people now. Look at Lindsey Graham, everybody that, and you and I 3 or 4 years ago, I liked Lindsey Graham. I'll eat crow on Lindsey Graham all day long. I liked him. You were like, the dude stinks. He's rotten to the core. And I think we probably got in an argument. I probably stuck up for Lindsey Graham. That guy is nothing but a globalist scrub. And look at what's happening. I guess at the South Carolina, we had one of our members that was out of South Carolina at that rally. And they said when Lindsey Graham came out, he got booed terrible.
I've seen the video.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he took the stage.
And everybody is waking up to that. Because I guarantee you, I was not the only one that 3 or 4 years ago thought Lindsey Graham was a good, strong, conservative, American first guy. But he's letting them expose themselves. And he does it time and time again. I think it's just funny that he lets him walk out there on the stage like that and just gets booed. I think it's genius. If you ask me.
You know, I want to address something else very quickly. It's kind of an aside almost, because in the conversation on our show prep, you talked to me about this guy on Twitter. I think it's the same guy that tried to say, "Oh, you got a podcast, but you're not up there with, Dan Bongino or anybody else. So why should we pay attention to you?" Something like that. Well, okay, look, here's something that's critically important to understand. I'm proud of the size of our audience. I think we do a pretty good job at it, but no, we're nowhere near the national audience of a lot of these national figures. Okay. But what we have to understand, and I pray that everybody understands this, and I pray that more people will speak out, do podcasts, write newsletters or Substacks or whatever, because it is the citizen journalists that are getting the message out, that are making the difference. It's the people that can either have or build an audience of a few hundred or a few thousand people. Now, I know that's not hundreds of thousands or millions, but it's the people that can speak to 1,000 people. And it's having 1,000 or 10,000 of those citizens across the country speaking the truth, speaking out, educating people, speaking from the heart. That's what's turning the tide in our country. So I applaud you, Todd. I applaud our PRC organization. I applaud. Some people would think, well, they're competitors. People have different websites and stuff. No, they're not competitors. We're all on the same side. We're all trying to deliver the same. Matter of fact, I promote them on my Substack. I often promote other Substack writers and other conservative people if they have good ideas, because this is what it's all about. This is how you win, is by uniting, not through a personality, by uniting behind ideas, ideology, behind the truth. And that's what's important. So when you run into people like that, just, what did Jesus say? To wipe the dust off your bottom of your sandals as you leave their town, and go on and preach the good word. So that's our philosophy here. And I hope everybody will adhere to it and not get disappointed. Never grow weary in well-doing.
Right. And the other thing about it is, when you look at the conversation of citizenry news people now, there's a conversation. They're different than the mainstream media or the big guys. A lot of the big people are still talking about how bad the Democrats are. It's all about Democrat bad. Democrats do this, Democrats do that. If we could just elect Republicans, we would get things done. Well, our conversation has never been Democrat good or Democrat bad, Republican good. We started the conversation 5 years ago. You've got to have the right Republicans in the right seat on the bus to get anything done. And when you elect the globalist Republicans, nothing happens. In fact, there are a lot of times more hindrance to getting things done that need to get done than the Democrats, because they hide and sneak around and make backroom deals, and they're not doing what they were elected for. Yeah, they sabotage everything. So the conversation that organizations like us are doing, we're past that Democrat bad, Republican good conversation. And that's the conversation that needs to be to the 100,000 people audience. That's where that conversation needs to get, so that people realize, hey, that's why stuff's not getting done. When I'm electing my Republican, he's not doing it.
the guy that came back to you on Truth, and social media is a pit. Yeah, I'm not
Oh, yeah.
encouraging everybody to get involved with arguments on everything, but the guy that said that to you, it just makes me smile because, you made him uncomfortable. You said something that resonated with him that he didn't want to resonate. You said something there that struck a nerve, or he would not have lashed out at you like he did. But that's what needs to happen. We need to have more voices striking nerves. We need to have more voices out there speaking truth. There's nothing more powerful than the truth.
Right.
And you may not see the result today. People may be defensive against it, but I guarantee you, that guy is going to think about that conversation with you a whole lot longer than you think about the conversation with him, if that makes
Well,
any
I brought the
sense.
sauce on my comments to him. I brought the sauce right back to him and dumped it right in the conversation. And if he wants to argue about anything that I put in that conversation, then he's arguing with himself because the facts are right in front of his head. So
There you go. There you go.
But let's transition into a conversation that you and I have had. There's one gentleman that has also been very vocal about speaking out against the administrative state and the bureaucracy and big pharma, media, big tech, all that stuff. And he has a D behind his name, and it's Robert Kennedy Jr. And it's a conversation that I think bears talking about. I don't know how much of it'll come true or if any of it'll come true, but you and I have a little different opinion on what RFK's role could be getting closer to. This is one of the things I want to watch in the next 15 months. I want to see how this plays out. I, for one, could see Trump and Robert Kennedy partnering up on a ticket after they steal the primary from him on the Democrat side, and Trump calling him out and Kennedy calling him out and saying, look, we differ on policy, a lot on policy, but there's one thing that we know that we have to obliterate, and that's the deep state, the bureaucracy, administrative state, all these things that are not putting America first and stealing our sovereignty, and partnering up, and I think could garner a huge vote get in the next election. You offered a little bit of a different scenario, which I think would be we should talk about. But in the end, the outcome would be exactly the same, and I would be excited about either one of the scenarios. Why don't you tell us what your scenario was? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, we kind of blew through that, but
no, there's a lot of things I like about RFK. Now, you're right. There's a lot of policies that are not MAGA, so to speak. I mean, his stance on the Second Amendment, I don't think matches ours. And there's a bunch of other things. But one of his biggest enemies, his primary enemy, is the globalist establishment, administrative state, right? So, and like you said, big pharma, big tech, all of that stuff. He's on the exact same page as we are. And, they say a good measure of a man is who his enemies are. You can define a man by who his enemies are. And I think there's a lot of truth to that when you look at RFK. Now, you're talking about the power of RFK joining Trump on a ticket. I'm not so sure that benefits all the parties as well as it could or should. Because I think there are a lot of conservative people like myself that would still have some reservations. I still vote for Trump, to get me wrong, but there are enough policy differences in RFK. I don't want to see him set up for the next 8 years after Trump. And so there are some things about that really would concern me.
Sure.
But the point is, I think we can accomplish the same thing without doing that. So let me hit you up with this. What if, I mean, and there's some follow up to this too. I want to say it in advance, okay? Because I want to get back to what Robert F. Kennedy must be thinking right now, because he's a very smart man, okay? But what if he goes to the primary, the Democrat primary, and they steal the nomination from him, which we know they will.
Yeah, they will.
And I would argue he knows they're going to do it. But anyway, I'll get back to that part of it. What if at that point, Trump comes out and says, look, I respect RFK. They stole the nomination from him, just like they did Bernie Sanders. But unlike Bernie Sanders, RFK is not a socialist. He loves America. We differ on a lot of policies, but he's a good man. He understands the globalist deep state. He understands how evil and corrupt big pharma is and the administrative state. He understands how our country has been subverted from within. And if he'll accept it, I will appoint him as the deconstruction czar to take down the administrative state or to investigate all of the COVID, big pharma, COVID cabal, conspiracy, or whatever, however you want to phrase all of that. I'll appoint him a special counsel. But if Trump came out and said, look, RFK will be my guy to go after all of these people that have caused us so much pain, I think you'd have all kinds of people jump all over that. I would not be surprised if RFK himself came out and said, well, I would accept that. I would happily do that. And if that happens, Todd, I mean, not only do you have almost all of the independents now backing Trump, but you've stolen a good portion, a significant portion of loyal Democrat voters that are still loyal to the Kennedy name. So I think that could be an in-game scenario that's just incredibly powerful. And you don't have to alienate any of the conservative base by making a vice president somebody that's going to be against the Second Amendment or whatever. Now, here's something else I want to throw into the mix, though. Remember I said a second ago how smart RFK is?
Yeah.
He has to know that they're going to steal the nomination from him.
I would certainly think so.
So there's only one of two possible scenarios I can see that he must be mulling over. One of them is because he hates the deep state enough that he wants to go ahead and put a sword in him, which is kind of playing down the lines of what we're talking about. I'm not saying he has a prearranged agreement with Trump, but I mean, he's doing his part to show up the deep state.
Right.
Or he could be considering a third party run, but I don't think so. Because I think he's smart enough to know that if he does that, he actually aids the deep state. Because I think he would pull a lot of Trump voters from a third party situation. A lot of those Democrats that would go ahead and switch and vote for Trump, a lot of the independents, he would pull them away. And I think he would actually empower the deep state to win. So I think he's smart enough. Maybe I'm looking through rose-colored glasses. Maybe this is wishful thinking, but I think he's smart enough to avoid that trap because he hates the deep state. He hates the administrative state.
He does. And I think that we would be naive to not think that this conversation is already going on or started with Trump and Kennedy. There's a relationship there with Trump and Kennedy from years back. That family and Trump have been, he was really good friends with JFK Jr. Trump was one of his best friends. And, there's probably a little bit of redemption that both of they want for the deep state in regards to that whole scenario. And, I think there's probably a lot of backroom stuff going on that we will never, ever know.
It very well could be. It wouldn't be them personally. It'd be other people that they know they're talking. But on the other hand, it may be one of those things that doesn't need to be said either. It might be, what do you call it, where their goals are aligned.
Right.
So there doesn't need to be a lot of discussion of it. But either way, again, I think it's going to be very interesting. Now, what really makes this interesting is what's going to happen with Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Do you want to get into that, or?
Yeah, we should, because I've been on the impeaching for a long time just because I was sick of what they did to Trump and I want them to do it to them. But we know the Senate would never do anything with it. It would just die there. But there's a lot of crazy, scary things that could happen if they impeach Joe Biden. And Kamala's crazy, so that they don't want that. Nobody likes her, not even the Democrats. But there's somebody that you think they're going to pull in to the fold. That for me was troubling because he's not distancing himself from Biden like one would think that he should at this point. Why don't you speak to who you think is going to be in the fold? And I have a guess, maybe of somebody they're going to bring back in, because neither one of them are distancing themselves from Biden at this point. And
well, the Democrats are faced with a huge challenge right now, because the more and more evidence keeps coming out, incontrovertible evidence of Biden and the Biden family corruption. And you're even seeing ABC and other news anchors and interviewers starting to pepper not just White House press secretaries, but Biden himself with questions about this.
Yeah,
we're still 15. Yeah, and we're still 15 months out. That is only going to increase, because God bless, Comer in the House for his investigations and what he's doing. The whistleblowers, God bless them and protect them. But more and more evidence keeps coming out. So it puts the Democrats in a very tenuous position, because the American people now believe, I believe the latest polling backs me up on this, the majority of Americans, not just Republicans, not just conservatives or independents, but the majority of Americans now believe that the Biden family is corrupt. And they believe that Biden was involved with Hunter's businesses and all of this kind of stuff. So, it's a small step from there to going to the T word, treason. And there may be a lot of people that don't want to use that word, but in their hearts, they're realizing the connection. So it puts the Democrats in a very weird situation, because anybody they run, everybody know. Okay, back up. Everybody knows that the Biden family is just a puppet of the administrative state, right? Of the establishment. Absolutely. Okay.
Yep.
So anybody that so let's say they dump Biden, whoever they replace him with, how are they going to escape that same label? I mean, especially as all this evidence keeps coming out, especially if they keep supporting and backing up Biden.
Right.
How are they going to separate themselves and say, oh, no, I'm really an outsider to all of that establishment, globalist, rhino, Marxist stuff. I'm not a part of that. That's a dilemma for the Democrats. Now, having said that, there's two tangents I want to take here, so you'll need to rein me in probably. But this is why, for a long time, I didn't necessarily think we needed to impeach Biden, because I would just assume he run against Trump. I think he might be very beatable for that very reason. But on the other hand, I've come to realize that no, the more we go after him, the more stuff keeps coming out, and the more it forces people to pay attention to it. Right. So I am full blown in favor of impeaching Joe Biden right now, because the evidence comes out. But I will guarantee you this: they will never let it go to trial in the Senate.
Right, I agree with that.
They will never give a platform for Trump and MAGA to present all of the evidence of the corruption and the establishment cabal to come out to the American people. So if that, I mean, what are you going to do? Not air the impeachment hearings? I mean, that would be just as bad to the American people. So they'll never let it go. He would resign. If they impeach him in the House, Biden will resign. That's a prediction I'm willing to make. Now, what happens then? This is where it gets interesting, because I think the Democrats, what they would probably do, what the globalist establishment would probably do, is they would probably go to Gavin Newsom. And that's who you were referring to in our conversation earlier. I think he's best positioned. They do not have a deep field to choose from. And I think Gavin Newsom fits the profile of someone that's articulate and attractive, and he can put a good face on things. The problem is, how are they going to separate him from, the whole label of being a puppet of the establishment? Because just the other day, he's still backing Biden.
Yeah, he won't separate himself.
He's got a terrible record in California. I mean, you've got more I just read the other day that California went from a $32 billion surplus to $130 billion deficit.
It's crazy.
It's unbelievable. People are moving away from California in droves. So, I mean, it's going to be, and can you imagine a debate between Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump? All Donald Trump has to say is just kind of laugh and say, look, you're no different than Joe Biden. You've got the same people backing you, same people supporting you, same people pulling your strings, and 100 million people know it.
Look at what you did in California.
Yeah. Look what you said about Biden. Look how you backed him, and look what you've done in California. Everybody knows you're the same thing. You're just a new face. You're a new paper facade for the same old people pulling the strings. And everybody's going to know it's true. So it's a huge, huge problem they've got. And I think the only question is, would they be better to break ties with Biden sooner or later? I think that's the only strategic move they're really trying to consider right now. But you had a different idea about someone they might go to on the kind of on their bench that they might pull up. And I thought that was kind of interesting, but I'm not sure it solves any of the dilemmas or answers I'm talking about, but it's an interesting choice. Go ahead.
It does, and and that choice for me, I think, would be Michelle Obama, I guess is what we'll call her. But
You
there's
call her
still a
Big Mike. Come on.
Big Mike, yeah, Big Mike. There's still a love of the Obamas in the United States that I never did understand. I'm sure some of it comes from being the first black family in the White House and all that stuff. And I care less what color they are. I'm more worried about the destruction they did to this country than anything. But to me, I think when you look at, if you have two people that are not going to separate themselves from Biden, who's going to get the more votes? Yours is Gavin because he's somebody fresh, not somebody that's been there. He's probably way more articulate than Michelle Obama. But I think likability wise, there's still way more people that like Michelle Obama than like Gavin Newsom. And
I
so
think
I
it's
think it
fair.
comes down, their decision is, do we go with people that will vote for Michelle Obama because she's black and she's a woman and roll the dice? Or do we put Gavin Newsom in there and roll the dice that people are going to see that he's different than Joe Biden, and maybe he's not separating himself, but he's more articulate. He's better spoken, all that stuff with politics and how he carries himself. It's a slippery slope either way because you've got Michelle Obama, who would be a disaster in there, I think, politically, and you've got Gavin Newsom, who's nothing more than Joe Biden 30 or 40 years younger.
Yeah, and if that happens, all Trump has to say during the debates over and over and over, just keep repeating, you're the fourth term of Obama. Biden
Yeah.
was the third term, you're the fourth term. And look where it's gotten us.
And there will be plenty of campaign ads with the quotes from Gavin Newsom back in Biden and Michelle and Barack back in Biden. So there's a lot of fodder there that is not good for the Democrats, and I don't know how they get away from it.
No. Here's I said I'd make a few predictions. I'm going to lay a couple of them out for you here. And I say predictions, it's kind of tongue in cheek. I'm not claiming to be Nostradamus, right? But I do not think Biden will be the nominee. Okay.
Fair.
I truly do not think he'll be the nominee. Trump will be the nominee on the Republican side. I believe, here's another one. We didn't even talk about this, and I can back it up and talk through it if you want to. I think Trump will garner over 90 million votes this time around.
I don't think we need to talk about it. I think it's obvious to me that he'll garner.
Yeah, he had 76 million, I think, last time around, and they say Biden had 81 million. That 81 million, they think how hard they had to stretch and push and cheat and steal to get him to 81 million. They're not going to be able to get to 90 million.
No.
The fraud they won't extend that far, especially because it's going to be harder this time. I know a lot of people are still kind of like cynical about that. Well, but even though a lot of the reforms we want still won't be in place, a lot of reforms we want are in place.
And some good things happen.
Yeah, and the COVID rules have expired. And it is going to be hard. By any stretch of the imagination, it will be harder for them to cheat this time around. Now, on our side, we need to be smart. In states where it's legal to ballot harvest, we need to go out there and do it. We need to make sure all those rural farmers or whoever that don't usually vote but are just fed up, we need to knock on their door and say, hey, you got a ballot, let's turn it in. Same thing with registration drives, right? We need to be proactive, and a lot of states are. There are a lot of organizations out there, and not the RNC, not Ronna McDaniel, but there are a lot of independent organizations out there. Since they've realized the scam that the RNC is, they've gone out there independently or doing it on their own in a lot of swing states. So that's the good news. There are a lot of good things like that happening, but I could truly see Trump getting at least 90 million votes. And if that happens, Todd, he's our president.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's good? What's good about the RNC not doing it, to me, the RNC is worthless. But anyway, it's forcing more people, citizens that wouldn't normally be involved in politics, to get off their couch and get involved.
Yep.
And that's how we're going to fix this thing. It's not going to be the RNC. It's not going to be Donald Trump. It's not going to be one single person that's going to do this. It's going to be the people have had enough of it, and they're getting involved in taking our country back from the Marxist globalist communists that have infiltrated every single aspect of our society. And when the common folk are getting back involved in politics, that's a good thing. It's a great
Oh,
thing.
absolutely. It's going to be people like Bill and Todd doing podcasts and newsletters.
Yeah.
It's going to be people like PRC members going out there talking to other people and not being afraid to stand up, and running for local school boards, and volunteering for the local Republican committees, and getting involved. Yeah, precincts, and showing up, and just, and even getting involved on social media every once in a while, right? And laying it down. That's right. So and talking to your neighbors, not being afraid to talk. Don't be bubbled like all these liberals try to bubble themselves. So no, I truly think, I'm cautiously optimistic. I truly think good things are ahead. I think to be 15 months out at this point in time, I think we're better positioned than I would have predicted 6 or 12 months ago we'd be. And I think as long as we can keep this going, as long as we don't grow weary in well-doing, as long as we don't get distracted, and they will throw things at us to distract us, Todd. Oh, yeah. There will be more indictments. There will be more revelations. There will be more accusations. There will be more maybe emergencies, whether it's pandemics or who knows, aliens,
anything to chew up the news cycle. Yeah,
that's right. But as long as we can stay focused, as long as we understand, we keep our eye on the prize, and we understand that 2024 is everything. I said this in a newsletter, but 2024 will either be the harbinger of a new dark ages, a new global dark ages, or it will be the beginning of a new renaissance. And I think it's cut and dry. And I think those are the stakes. Literally, those are the stakes. This is every bit as big a war as World War II or any of the wars that Americans have spilt blood in. And now hopefully it doesn't go kinetic. Hopefully it doesn't go that type of violence. But it's every bit as important, every bit as big, and every bit as crucial to our future and our freedoms. Not just us for America, for the entire world.
I think it's probably more crucial because it's hard to define the enemy in this. It's hard to pick them out. It's hard to decide who's good, who's bad. It's a battle for your mind every day. The news cycle, everything you read. Is it real? Is it not real? Who's doing the story right here? Where are they getting their sources from? It's a constant battle of information that you put into your mind, and you have to decipher 24 hours a day if it's real or not real, or if it's propaganda. It is totally, to me, it's harder because they aren't wearing a uniform. They don't have a mark on their helmet. They're not marching at you. They're not driving tanks against you. Mm-hmm. They're bombarding you from every angle, and you don't expect it, and you don't think that they're the enemy. That's why it's so hard.
In the ancient Roman Empire, they had something called breads and circuses. It was a philosophy.
We have here in America, a lot of them.
Yeah, it was a philosophy of the emperors. Now, there's two phases of Rome. I'm not talking about the Roman Republic. I'm talking about the empire that came later, the second half of Rome. And that's when things started falling apart. But the emperors knew that really the Praetorian Guard, their equivalent of the administrative state, knew that if they could keep the populace happy, keep them fed, that's bread, and keep them entertained, that's the circuses, like gladiators and stuff like that. So if they could keep them fed and entertained, they wouldn't pay attention. They would leave all the bigger stuff to the emperors and the government. And that worked for a long time until it didn't. And it's worked for a long time in our country until it doesn't. And I think we're on the cusp of realizing that it doesn't work anymore.
Well, so I think when you talk about bread and circuses, I love sports. I don't like pro sports as much as I used to, but there's a lot of circuses in pro sports. It keeps a lot of people distracted as to what's going on. And you got to learn to decipher, hey, I can watch a game, but you can't just forget about everything else and get so locked in on the game that you completely ignore everything else that's going around you. And I think there's more people that are realizing, hey, sports are awesome, but I was way too absorbed in that. And I had my head in the sand. And you go from season to season, you know, football, basketball, hockey, baseball, over and over and over and over again. And when you're a true diehard fan, that's the circuses. It keeps you distracted from going on. And when I was watching sports like that, when I was betting all the time and fantasy sports and stuff, I wasn't paying attention to politics. I wasn't. It was an afterthought to me.
You know, you're either going to be an eagle or you're going to be an ostrich.
Right.
Eagles have keen eyes. Eagles, they both hunt. They both have to eat, right? They both enjoy the games. They both enjoy living their life. And I suppose you call it enjoyment. They both indulge in the activities of living and life. But the eagle's keen-eyed. The eagle knows what's going on around him. The eagle's aware.
Right on.
The ostrich puts his head in the sand. Okay. And that's really what's going to determine our future. Do we have more eagles or ostriches in our country?
Or lions.
That's my wisdom for the moment.
Right. And remember, lions don't concern themselves with the opinions of sheep ever. So
very well said. Very well said.
We went a little long today, but I think it was a good conversation. I just want to wish everybody very happy 4th of July weekend with your family and friends. Remember why we have this holiday, the people that fought for this country. And remember, we already broke free from the Marxist globalist agenda once, and we're in a battle for it again. Lean in and engage in it. And remember, it's always a great day to be an American, and communism still sucks. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.
Happy 4th, everybody.
Thank you.